So that is our prelude today. Hope, peace, joy, and love. God sent into the world. We count down to the day of Christmas when we trust, when we believe, when we have faith that Christ will come again, yet again into our hearts and into the world. That is what we do. This week, as we are counting down, we hear the story of an interaction between two pregnant women. Two women who, in their own ways, are carrying very risky pregnancies. Elizabeth is elderly, never had a baby before. She has learned recently that she is carrying a child, and her husband is not able to speak because he didn't believe it would happen. Mary is unmarried, engaged, but unable to be pregnant in any legal kind of way. Mary, upon hearing that she is pregnant, runs to her Aunt Elizabeth, this other woman. We've speculated maybe she ran away for fear of what the neighbors would think. Maybe she ran away because Joseph doesn't know yet if he's going to marry her. Maybe she ran away because she was scared of being pregnant and there was somebody else in her family who she could talk to. Maybe she ran away because she had such joy that she needed to share it with everybody she knew. We don't know why she ran away, but when she ran to Elizabeth's home, immediately the child inside of Elizabeth leaped for joy. I'm guessing that leaping for joy was not exactly a joyful experience for Elizabeth. I'm guessing that leaping for joy felt something like stabbing her bladder or her lung. Felt something like turning over your stomach and maybe needing to retch. Felt something uncomfortable. But isn't that just exactly how God is? Isn't that just exactly how joy comes into our lives? That there is joy and happiness and goodness and love, and at the same time there is something uncomfortable about it. If you get an email from me, you might read at the bottom a quote by Flannery O'Connor that says, "All of human nature resists grace because grace changes us, and the change is painful." Grace, love, peace, joy, hope change us. And the change is wonderful. And the change is painful. When Elizabeth greets Mary, she greets her with a prophetic voice, saying, "You are the mother of my Lord." And Mary, too, responds in a prophetic way. She responds in song, in saying, "This is what God has done for me, and not only for me, but for all of us. God has blessed us. God has created in us a new life. God has brought down the mighty and lifted up the lowly. God has healed the tears of the past." Funny that Mary, this unwed teenager, would say those words. Funny that in the anxiety of a difficult or risky pregnancy, Mary would say those words. But Mary said those words in affirmation of what God had done in the past and what God promised to do through her and in the future. Mary said those words trusting God to remain true and steady in God's promises. Mary spoke those words in faith that something that she couldn't yet see or imagine would yet happen. We are something like Mary. Something like Mary when we hold healing services and those of us who are broken or hurting step up and step forward and sing, "Healer of our every ill, hope of each tomorrow." We are something like Mary when at a funeral for someone that we have loved, we stand up and sing, "Lift high the cross," because death doesn't win. We are something like Mary when we look around and say, God is still good and God is still working. We are something like Mary when we invite our own, quote, single parents to come and be here in church with us and care for them and their children. Because I have great respect for anyone who can come and sit with 1 or 2 or 3 children by themselves in a place where you're supposed to be quiet. We are something like Mary when we look at the financial situation of our congregation, and the council still steps out on faith that we will continue as a congregation and not simply close. When the congregation votes to sell property so that God can continue God's good work in us. We are something like Mary when we continue to speak the good news of God's grace through Jesus Christ, of the hope and the peace and the joy and the love that God sends into this world every day. When we continue to prepare our hearts and our worlds for this infant child that we are expecting, because we know that it brings great joy. And we know it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to live with bodies or minds that are suffering. It is uncomfortable to know that someone we love has passed on before us and we don't know what that looks like or where they are or if they can still be with us. It is uncomfortable to come to church and try to keep children quiet, or to sit in church when children aren't quiet. It is uncomfortable to live with the anxiety of what our financial situation will be and is, and when God's providence will come through. It is uncomfortable not to know and not to be in control and not to be able to say exactly what's going to happen when. It is uncomfortable, just as carrying and bringing into the world a new baby who kicks and jabs and later will scream and fuss and later will not want to sleep and later will stay behind at the temple and give you a heart attack, and later will forsake the trade of his father and set out into the desert and teach and preach and get into trouble with the authorities and be killed because of it. It is uncomfortable. So that is what this story is about. That love comes into the world. A love that is meant to change us. Bringing a grace that we may resist. Because it will change us. And that change will be painful. And that change will be amazing, awe-inspiring, Christ-led, and full of the presence of God. So as we wait these last few days, as we prepare this last week for this infant Christ to come again, let us embrace the joy and the hope and the peace and the love and the discomfort, and know that God is truly at work in us once again. Amen.